Good evening, everybody. How are y'all? Good. My name is Dan Johnson. I'm the solicitor for the Fifth Circuit. So a lot of times I've been told that the term solicitor tends to throw people off. And so it's synonymous with district attorney. So I have two counties, Richland and Kershaw. Most people are familiar with what the district attorney does. So I'm going to pop right into it. I'll try not to stand in front of the slides, but you should have them in the form of a handout as well, if you want to refer to that when you need to or make notes. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. They give me 35 minutes, and I have 122 employees and a bunch of different programs, so I'm going to do what I can to cover the things we do. We've got a lot of the things that we do. Where you got? Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so usually we prosecute about 10,000 cases a year. So if you think about it like this, we have cases coming in from the Richland County Sheriff's Department, CPD, USCPD, IRMO, SLED, every law enforcement agency that you can think of, Eastover, wherever it may be, right? Well, we just started, I think the Sheriff's Department just opened up their region yesterday, Sunday, 4 o'clock. But we get cases from every law enforcement agency, and they all push into my office. So that means in this county, in Richland, we get about 123 cases a week that come in. And we prosecute somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 a week. And they move in a variety of different ways. Some move in the courtrooms, some move through the programs, the various programs that we'll discuss during the course of this 30-some minutes. And some, of course, are dismissed, depending on what the various facts and evidence associated therewith is. So there's a lot going on, and I think most people will be surprised at what those numbers look like. That's the population. We have 121 employees. A lot of those people work in various programs. We've got 42 lawyers that handle those cases. So that means if you think in terms of the Sheriff's Department, I think the sheriff's up to 700 some odd deputies. CPD has 400 or so. So when you think about those numbers of officers that are operating in the community, and then what that pipe looks like in terms of the cases being pushed to us, we've got 42 lawyers handling all those cases. So it's pretty busy. It's a pretty busy place. This is a breakdown of kind of what we did last year. We moved about 8,700 cases last year. So disposed means prosecuted in various different ways. I read one time on Twitter when someone said I disposed of cases, they made it sound as if we just threw them all away. Disposed is a term of art. So that's kind of what we do in a given year. Next slide. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I have two counties. Yes, sir.
How many public defenders are there?
They have about 24, 25. They've made some budgetary strides. I know that last year I approached the city and got them an additional $100,000 so that they could do more. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. You know, it's a three-legged stool, so to speak. We can't do our job unless they have their people too. Because we can't move the cases if people aren't represented, if indigent people are not represented. So you got to feed the whole system, and I think a lot of people don't always understand that, but it's the nature of the beast. Of course, what people also don't realize is that there are private attorneys out there too, and they often are starving. So they got cases too that people are paying for. So the difference is we have to prosecute all the cases. The public defender represents people who are indigent, and then of course other people have lawyers out there who they've either paid for or the public defender has conflict in those cases. So there's a lot of lawyers swimming around. Okay, so we have 60. You caught that, right? So that's for people who are paying attention, right? So we have 16 circuits. Okay, so what does that mean? There are 16 circuit solicitors, of which I'm one. I have two counties. Some have 4, some have 3. It's really based on population. So I'm the 5th Circuit Solicitor. Try to say that 3 times fast, right? And of course, you see the breakdown across the state. Next slide. Okay, I covered that. I talked about what I do. make decisions when somebody's been charged with a crime. You guys read the paper, you see some of the things that are going on, and I handle those cases when somebody has been charged. That's part of my mission statement. You just zoom through. You zoom through my mission statement? You don't care about my mission statement?
No, the mission statement.
Okay, go ahead, next slide. Next slide, there we go. Okay, so one of the things we did when I took office, I'm in my second term. It's an elected position, 4-year terms, so I'm in my second. One of the things that we did when I first took office is we rearranged our office to reflect the law enforcement regions. And we did that for a couple reasons. So the Sheriff's Department, have y'all gone to the Sheriff's Department yet? Yes, no? Okay. If you haven't, you will. If you have, you know that they're broken up by region 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and now 8. Okay, so what we did was we broke our office up so that we had lawyers in each region that reflected kind of the various disciplines that we deal with in terms of types of crimes: murders, armed robberies, rapes, burglaries, drugs, misdemeanors. And we did that for a couple reasons. One, so that citizens wouldn't have to know 42 different lawyers. They only would need to know the number of lawyers that are in their region, so up to 5. If you're in the city, it's up to 9. We also did it for law enforcement because we felt like it would be easier for law enforcement officers to have a rapport with prosecutors so that we can kind of talk to them about cases and how to prepare cases if it was a smaller number of people. So it really works, and it also allows for better collaborative effort when you have the teams broken up, where people take ownership of their region. So, and it allows you to know the region better. Because what people don't think about, I was driving around yesterday. I was born in D.C., and I grew up in Maryland. Right? So there are parts of the county that you might not go into. If you don't have any business there, you might not go there. And so when you have a region, it causes you to learn that area better and some of the people and what people care about. It allows us to be more effective prosecutors in that way. Another thing we do in terms of that training program, when lawyers come in, they ride in their region with law enforcement for 30 days. Nobody's doing that in our state. We're doing it because I really wanted them to understand the differences in these regions and get to know some of the people in the region so that we can be more effective in that regard. And I think it's very helpful because the county looks different at 3 a.m. So it's helpful to see some of that and get some understanding about what's happening. Next slide. Okay, that's kind of how it's broken up. You guys can see that. That's the regions. In fact, we need to update this slide to reflect the 8th region down in Eastover. Next slide. Okay, you can't see that, but that's a breakdown. I keep a lot of metrics. You know, y'all may not know kind of what my resume is, but I also served in the Army Reserves and deployed to Iraq and did all that. And now I'm in the Air Guard. And so I keep metrics on everything that go back to my predecessor's time. And the reason why I do that is because, you know, I make various decisions, some of which are popular, some of which are unpopular. But one of the things I like to do is check my metrics against my predecessors. And so I know those things, and it's helpful to know that. So those are some of the metrics of things that we've been doing since 2000. Next slide. I didn't know this was in here.
Surprise.
Yeah, that's interesting. I built this, you probably can't see it, but this has to do with our murder cases, actually. I'm not a fan of that being in here, but I'll tell you why I have it in here just briefly. It's a little off topic, but I think it's worthy of knowing. I made a decision in a case that had to do with a young girl who was kidnapped and murdered and stuck in a hole. I made a deal because we couldn't find the little girl. The Sheriff's Department couldn't find him. And I made a deal with that defendant to get him to tell us. And there was a lot of people in the paper who were criticizing the deal. Of course, I knew that we were never going to find her any other way. And it was a one-shot deal to get this little girl found for her mama. And that's really what it was all about. But I took a lot of criticism, so that made me go back and look at what those sentences looked like over for about 20 years. And so, you know, the deal was a 30-year deal, and people say, I can't believe it's only 30 years. And then when you go back and look at the averages across time from 2000, you see it's right in the wheelhouse, right? And that's just something people don't know. It makes for good in the paper, good people talking, but I look at metrics to be able to know whether or not we're making good decisions. And that's kind of how I operate. So I don't know how that got in there, but anyway. Next slide. Next slide. That's all stuff that doesn't matter. Okay, so in here, you'll do this. I won't talk about these, but inside this thing, I put this in here. There are cases that we've done over time. I have a lot of programs. I'm going to talk about those programs, but sometimes when I do that, I get criticized because they say, all the solicitor does is do programs. So I put these in here to remind those people. And somebody said, Judge Manning said, everybody who comes to a football game doesn't come to cheer for you, right? So I put this in there to remind people that we prosecute cases too. I try to do both, right? I try to have an office where when we have people who just made minor mistakes, that we handle those in a certain way in terms of operating programs to help people get back on track. And then when I have violent criminals, we prosecute violent criminals and try to put them in jail. But every criminal is not the same. It's not all the same stuff. So you have to have specialty courts to differentiate between. For instance, I was just upstairs speaking at our juvenile drug court graduation. Juvenile drug court is a program that helps kids who are addicted to drugs get off of drugs and get clean, and it ends in a dismissal, right? But the kids, they get back to school, they graduate, they do well, and we get them clean. So it's a great program, and it also is sobering. It's sobering for those people who will say, oh, marijuana's no big deal. And then you go up there and you listen to these kids who say they couldn't go to school and they couldn't do the things they were supposed to do because they were hooked on weed. And now they're clean, and now one guy has a 3.0 and is about to go to the Citadel. Wow. So I'm a believer, right? Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Let's get to the programs. Let's talk. All right. So over the course of time, we have developed a myriad of different programs to help people who have been accused of crimes but have committed minor nonviolent offenses. Okay, so we've had some that we've continued, and then we have also created some that no one else in the state is doing, or they are now doing as a result of the things that we've done here in the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit, in fact, is kind of the father of intervention programs, or mother, depending on how you want to look at it, since back in the 70s, right? So the first one we have is pretrial intervention. Pretrial intervention is a program for nonviolent offenders who have made minor mistakes, and what we do is they do community service, they make restitution, they have to go to classes, scared straight, things of that nature. And when they complete, it does end in a dismissal. It has an 87% success rate that the people don't come back. It's awesome and it works most of the time. JCAP is for juveniles, same principle, but for kids. We also have JPTI, and really they're the same program, but I've got 2 counties. And so we have different budget lines, so they have to have different names so that we can know which one is which. But JCAP and JPTI are the exact same program. The alcohol education program, that program was developed because we have kids that fit in that age range between, say, 18 and 22, 23 years old, right? And they go to the cup, right? And they drink too much. And then what happens? They get arrested. And by the way, they could lose their Hope Scholarship. That's bad, right? You don't want them to be out of school over a drinking ticket. So we have a program called alcohol education to teach them about the dangers of alcohol, right? That ends in the dismissal so that it doesn't ruin them for school, but we try to get them to make the right decisions. It's a program that works. And yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Are any of these programs offered for just the kids, even if they don't get in trouble, or they have to be in that trouble in order to do
No, I'm the DA, right? So there are a lot of programs out there, but the programs that we offer are specifically geared towards dealing with people who have been accused of crimes, right? And there's a lot of reasons why that is. One, these programs are not funded by the government. So they are, you know, they rely on the people paying for most of them. Some of them are free, but most of them cost money. So as a result of the way we have to fund it, we couldn't do it that way. Now what I do is I go around and speak to kids all the time. I kind of spend a lot of my time speaking to kids and talking to them about avoiding these programs. Because the best thing would be that if we didn't have any of this, and we, you know, like if we could just count on the 95% of kids are doing the right thing. They're not in trouble, they don't come through here, they're not doing any of this. These programs are geared towards the 5%, or maybe even smaller. I don't know what the number is, but they're geared towards people who have made wrong choices. Okay, so traffic education is for lead foot people, right? People who like to speed, right? So I heard somebody talking. So that program deals with exactly that. It's a program that tries to get people to make the right decisions in regard to their driving habits. It's a good program, it works. The next program I'm pretty proud of, the Youth Arbitration Program. I have two, one in Richland and one in Kershaw. They run differently, actually. In Richland, we do the program in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department. So the Sheriff's Department is on the ground, we fund it, and the big difference is that program is a free program for kids who have made minor mistakes. It was in schools. We expanded it out beyond the walls of the school to help kids. And the reason why I have it is that there are some families, because of economic situations and other issues, who'll say, I'm not paying $300 for a program. And as a result, their kid loses. And especially when it comes to things like drugs, if you get a drug conviction, there's no student loans, no federal government money. So that could be a killer. You know, most of us can't afford to send our kids to college, certainly if we had to fund it ourselves, so you would get no student aid, actually no federal aid of any kind. So these programs are important in that regard. Yes, ma'am.
Basically, you're just helping them out?
No.
You volunteer for that?
No. The way youth arbitration works is this. We have community, I'm saying it right, we have community volunteers, so people like yourselves would volunteer to be trained as arbitrators.
Okay, and what's the training process? My friend's trying to get me involved, that's why I'm asking.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So what happens is, the Sheriff's Department runs that part of the program. What they do is they teach you how to become an arbitrator. All you have to do is call the Sheriff's Department, ask for youth arbitration. They'll get you into a class, and in that class, they teach you how we run this process. So essentially, what we do is the child comes face to face with the victim of their crime. It's nonviolent crime. So it's broken windows and vandalism and things of that nature. And then what happens is they have to make restitution. They do community service, right? And that program, incidentally, has a 92% success rate. So it works. It's also endorsed by the NAACP. And you don't see very many programs that the prosecutors running that are endorsed by the NAACP, right? But that's one of them, and it works. Yes, sir.
The family have to get involved with you in the program first, otherwise, and they have to abide by the laws.
That's right.
What is,
They have
we
to
have people coming from all over the United States to see this.
to try to run this program, right? The program works, and it works for a couple reasons. One, we know that when kids get into DJJ, there's a 50% likelihood that they'll come back. So it's a staggering number. So we know that if we can get them making the right decisions and understanding the impact that the crime has had on the other person, it changes kids. You know, because not every kid is a hardened criminal. In fact, most of them aren't. But a lot of them just aren't thinking about the impact of their crime. And these are nonviolent. I'm not talking about armed robbery, rape, murder, and burglary. I'm talking about, you know, vandalism and, you know, little things, throwing eggs, you know. Okay, so we have the Worthless Check Program. The Worthless Check Program is another program that really helps business owners. So essentially, I mean, how many people have ever been written a bad check? Right? And so what happens is, you get written a bad check, and then you try to call the person and get them to make good on the check, and then they run you around, and then you chase them down. They keep saying they're not available, or they had to go to their mama's house, and then you spend a whole lot of time at the magistrate. Well, what we do with this program is you send us the check and we run the person down. I send them a letter. It's amazing how quickly they pay. It's weird. I haven't figured out why. But they have to pay the amount of the check plus your bank fee. So in fact, we do it for the county, and we've recovered almost $1.5 million in people who've written bad checks for their taxes. And we,
Slides up, it's a little over 2 million now.
2 million now. So, you know, we've been running this program for quite some time, and it just keeps going up. We do it for any local business. We do it for people who sell Mary Kay, people who have their own businesses. We do it all across the business community, and it's free. In fact, Check Care uses us. So if you hire Check Care, you pay them, they come to us, we do the check for free, and then they go. That's what happens. That's how it works.
So
Right?
skip them, just come right to you.
You could, right? And we do it, and it helps business owners, because most businesses fail for financial reasons. So it's a really big deal for the business community, and it's also helpful for the check writer, because what happens is if they make good on the check in the required amount of time, we won't seek the warrant against them. So that's kind of what the leverage is. Yes, ma'am.
Back to number 5.
Number 5.
Target age for the involved.
You can't be over 18. So there's some play in that sometimes, depending on where the kid is in school. But that's something that usually the sheriff and I will talk about if we have somebody. Go next slide. Okay, so we got more programs, right? So juvenile drug court I just talked about, it was going on upstairs. I run 2 adult drug courts, one in Richland and one in Kershaw, for adults who are hooked on drugs. These are for users, not for dealers or traffickers. But we, you know, right? So the reality of it is there are some people where the drugs are talking and it's not them. And then they'll just keep coming back and back and back, and we're trying to solve that problem. And it works. Right? So we have adult mental health court. Amy came in here. Did the probate judge come tonight?
Yeah.
Or her?
She had her representative.
Okay, or her representative. So we run that with the probate court. She does the heavy lifting, quite honestly. The reason why they need us in the program is because we have to make the decision on who to put in. And then she handles it from there in regard to probate. Good program. She and I started the first juvenile mental health court in South Carolina. Most people don't know, but I want to say 60 to 70% of girls who go in behind the wall in DJJ have underlying mental health problems and PTSD. So we're trying to deal with that issue first. And, you know, you'd be surprised at some of the reasons why people run away and do the things that they do. So this program is meant to get at some of those issues. We started the first veterans court in South Carolina. Now there are a few. I think Walt up in Greenville has copied our model, and he's doing it as well. But it deals with, I'm a veteran, and there's probably some veterans out there in the crowd who, all right. So essentially what happens is when guys go overseas, guys and girls, they don't always come back the same. In fact, they leave a little bit of themselves wherever they go every time we go somewhere. And this program is meant to link them back up with the VA. So, you know, when our first guys that came in, we had 4 guys that came in. They were homeless, addicted, and jobless. And then when they graduated from the program, they had jobs. Well, one was going back to school. They had places to live, and they were clean. So it's a great program, and we use the VA because they have already earned that service, so it's free to them. And I say that in quotes, right? And the judge uses progressive discipline to make sure that they're compliant and going to their treatment and doing all the things they're supposed to do. If they don't go, it puts them in the jailhouse for the night, right? And we walk them down that path to get them back on track. It's a good program. It works. It doesn't cost the taxpayers a dime. And in fact, that's how all of these programs work, except for drug court. We get some funding from the state for that. DUI court, that's a new court. And I think that ultimately, there's 2 of us running pilot programs now, my circuit and Florence. And here's the deal with that, and I think it could be controversial, but here's why we're doing it, and I think it's just worth public consumption, because you may never, when people attack you on these programs, you never get a chance to explain, right? They'll sue you first, and then attack you, so as a lawyer, I can't talk about pending litigation, so that's how that happens, so here's why we're doing it. DUI third and above carries 3 to 7 years. Mandatory minimum of 3, maximum of 7. So you can do it 14 times, it carries 3 to 7, okay? So even if the judge gives you 7, it's a non-violent offense, so you only do a third of that. So 2.5 years or so, you're out, and you're still what? A drunk. So what happens is you keep on driving until you hit and kill somebody, then you get 12. That's the cycle, right? That's what happens. And people say, why was he out, right? Because he served his time, right? So what this program is designed to do is try to get at that problem and do treatment and treat the person so we can stop that cycle. How do we do it? We use a little bit of technology. We have a device called a scram device that I think is going to get real popular here soon because the public defender wants to sue, well, is trying to sue me. So the reason we're doing it, what it does is it checks for the presence of alcohol transdermally, right, every 30 minutes. So we put that on your ankle, and you incidentally volunteer because otherwise you're going to prison, right? Right, so they, I mean, really, there's a mandatory minimum time associated with that. So they're going to go to prison, and then they're going to get out and kill somebody. They have an opportunity to try to get clean. So we put this on their ankle, and they wear that for almost a year. And they go through this program, they go through the meetings. We had our first graduation, one of the guys went to 300 meetings. Now, if I was just prosecuting him and putting him in jail for the 2 years that he's going to get, he doesn't have to go to any meetings. And he can keep drinking and do his thing. And I think people don't always think about that. So, they wear this device, and then when they get to a point in the treatment program where the treatment providers deem it's time to wean them off of that, get them off of the device, then we do that, and then we follow that up with home visits, and we do random testing, and it's a great program, and it works. And you know, when people are giving themselves back, it's a good thing, especially if we've been able to stem that. And so I think it's going to work, and it's something that we're going to do, and we'll see what happens with the public defender. Homeless court. It's a program that we started, and I'm not against the public defender. They do what they do. I think that's a short-sighted one, especially since these programs end in dismissals. So it's not like Johnson's walking away with this, bag of flesh. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to treat people and get them help. But that's just the way it is. I'm on a tangent, but it's in my crawl, right? Okay, so homeless court. What is homeless court? Why do we have anything to do with that? Well, I mean, we got a little bit of attention for our treatment of the homeless as a city. And so we felt like that we could come in and help a little bit with that. Here's the problem. You have people who are homeless, and they get these tickets. And so really what made me do this is like there was a little, I was going to, you were with me, right, Nicole? Nicole's my director of communications. So we were going to Wild Wing one day. I get out of my truck, and the guy says, hey, you remember me? I voted for you. And he's a homeless man. And he says, but you're not doing nothing for me, right? And he said, what are you going to do about these? Right? And he had a stack of tickets, right? And he said, I can't pay these, and it's true. He can't pay them. So what's going to happen to him? They put him in a jailhouse where he serves his sentence, right? And he'll serve his sentence, 30-day sentences for all those tickets, one after another, right? At the cost to the taxpayers of $64 a day, plus meds. Because he can't pay the tickets, and he's going to keep getting them because he's homeless, right? So the question becomes, why are we doing that? Then you have people, and I learned this when I was researching this program. I went out to San Diego, and admittedly, I guess I'm a little naive. I was a little naive. When I think of homeless people, I think of some dude with a shopping cart, right? That's kind of how I've always pictured the homeless. Well, when I went out there, I realized we had a lot of different kinds of homeless people. We have people who sleep in their cars who are working. We have people with families that are kind of teetering on homeless, like they're one ticket away from being homeless. So we have these people where they just get stable, then they get a ticket, then they pay the ticket. They have to choose between living in the house the apartment, or paying the ticket. So one of the things that we want to do with this homeless court is we have various treatment providers across the city who work with people to get them stable. And so those treatment providers are doing that for free because they care about the homeless. They treat them, and they'll come in and tell the judge when they feel like that person's gotten to a point where they're in a stable living situation. And quite frankly, we don't have enough long-term temporary housing, right, in our city. And it's something we need to work on. But this helps them get there. And if they get to that point, we will let them not pay that ticket that they were never going to pay anyway. So it's not that big a deal for us in a lot of ways because they're never going to pay that ticket, right? But it is a big deal in terms of the cost for what the government, what you pay for people to be housed in the jailhouse and the opportunity to get these people back in a stable living situation. It's a big deal. Yes, ma'am.
Why are they getting tickets?
All kinds of stuff. So it might be illegal parking. It might be, we have a law called aggressive panhandling, right? People that are loitering, right? I'll give you an example. If you walk out there and look out the window right now, there's a dude out there, right, with his sleeping bag laid out. That is where he's going to sleep tonight. Several, right? Now, I'm a prosecutor, right? I prosecute all robberies, rapes, murders, and burglaries, right? I'm not interested in prosecuting that man because he doesn't have any money or he has a mental problem. I mean, that's a social problem that we're trying to deal with. I don't know how well it's going to work, but we're going to try. So that's what we're doing with that. Expungements is a statutory program that the solicitor is directed by statute to help those people who have one minor offense on their record that is capable of being expunged. So that's another function that we do. We do it all across at the request of pastors and various people in the community. We go and we do this service for people who need it to get jobs because sometimes they can't get jobs for something that's on their record for 100 years, right? It never comes off. So we help with that. Next slide.
Question.
Yes.
In regards to the expansion, how are you working with the lawmakers who's making a strong change now to change that?
How am I working with lawmakers who are making a strong attempt to change it? Well, here's the good thing about the legislature, right? They don't do a lot. I mean, they don't get along, and half the time, to be honest with you, we did something several years ago, and the governor vetoed it, right? I'm not going to get into politics, but we tried to do some things that I thought made sense. I have given my suggestions. I have a person who goes up there, and we're trying to work with them. To be honest with you, normally when you open up these laws, these guys put all this stuff in them that sabotages the laws. DUI is like that. It's a mess, right? To be honest with you, all the assault and batteries are like that. Every time you open up one of these laws, they put all these poison pills in. That's just Johnson's opinion. Right? So, I mean, but from a legal perspective, I can justify it, right? So we're working with them, but don't hold your breath, brother, because you might fall out if you're waiting for them to do something good, right?
I have worked with them as a citizen that forced them to make some changes that they otherwise would have not made because they back and forth with each other
Yeah,
to look good.
that's
not
right.
for the sake of the people. but
I hadn't
for the
seen any of that. I hadn't seen where they are, where the legislation regarding expungement has worked out where it makes sense. They're trying to clean some things up, so I'll give you an example, right? When they changed the law in 2008, this is kind of more than y'all want to know, but I got one more thing, and I'm gonna open up the questions. When they changed the law, it used to say crimes that carried that were a misdemeanor of 1 year. Well, some of that changed because we changed the structure, so there was a loophole where it was hard to get certain things expunged, right? And that's what we were trying to address. And I think we were able to do that. But that opened up a whole nother kind of, everybody's theory on expungement. I don't know what they're going to do. They're also talking about the difference between expungement and pardons, and there's a lot going on. I guess we'll see what they do, right? The last thing I want, you can skip through all that. That's just stuff we've done. Oh, back, one more. Okay, we did do this, and I think that's noteworthy, something you want to know. We employed one of the first social workers in a prosecutor's office to help us deal with a variety of issues. One, to help us deal with mental health court. Two, I don't speak social worker. So when we have kids that they're kicking out of school or jailing the mama because she can't get them to school, I just think that process is needed some work. So the social worker's helping us with that. Next slide. Okay, so the IDC, the Intelligence Distribution Center, before Mrs. Honeywell was murdered, we started working on something called, this concept called the IDC. We had a variety of cases where people were on bond, and there were these guys who would get out and they'd go kill somebody. Well, I can't have that. So, and also we weren't talking, the agencies, there was a lot of communication gaps, I'd say. So SLED has this thing called the Fusion Center. And so prosecutors could go to the Fusion Center and ask them questions about various legal issues, people, and get information. The problem with that is that no prosecutor, because you got 300 cases and you're moving them, nobody calls every day about every case, right? So in other words, you could go and get arrested in Richland, get a bond, get arrested tomorrow in Lexington, nobody will know that happened because it won't have hit the computer system yet. And these guys do this all over town, right? So we began working on this, and there was a lot of legal loopholes I had to go through, and we had to get this thing sole source, and we paired up with a company. One part of it is just the intelligence portion. We have a lady who pushes intelligence to prosecutors as opposed to prosecutors looking for the information. So if I know the person's been arrested all over town, that'll go. If they've got a bond hearing, she'll push that information that the prosecutor needs to know about that person straight to them. So we do, when there's somebody that's rearrested, she shoots that. So that's part of it. The other part of it is a public-private partnership with a company called Offender Management. And what they do, technology has changed, right? And I'm 45, so I don't even follow it. Like, I don't know what a Snapchat is, but I know, I've heard of it, right? But this is different. What we can do is if a person's on bond, mind you, I said I had 8,000 cases, right? Well, this would shock you, I think. 600 of those cases, of those people were in jail awaiting trial, right? So if I've got 8,600 cases, right? 600 of those people are in jail awaiting trial. The other 8,000 are out unmonitored, doing whatever. So I have 300 and some odd pending burglaries, and they'll be out running around. All robbers, out running around. So the way I first saw this part of this process, I went down to Hilton Head, Duffy Stone Circuit, another solicitor, and he has a mini version of what we have. And he has a guy up on the screen, a murderer, who's out on bond. And I said, that area, and I'm down in Hilton Head, that area looks familiar. Where's that? Oh, that's Wood Hill Mall in your circuit. And the guy's charged with murder. And he committed a murder down in Hilton Head, and he's running around up here. So we had to do something. So we connected with this company, and truth be told, I have to do a shameless plug here because she's in the room and she's in the back. Jeanette McBride owns the courthouse. She's responsible for everything that is courthouse, okay? And it was her, she didn't have to let me have the space to make it happen. And she did, and she let us do this, and otherwise it wouldn't have been able to happen. So she had the foresight to let us do it. So they're in the space as well with us. They share the space. We can put monitors on a person's ankle. So let's say, God forbid, let's say that you beat your, I don't know if y'all are married, but anyway, I'm just assuming. Let's say you look like you're married. You look happy, right? So let's say that's the case. We can put a monitor around his ankle, right? And we can do 100 or 99 inclusion and exclusion zones. So we can put an electronic zone around him But then let's say you're staying at your mama's house. We can put an exclusion zone and we can make them any shape that we want, as large or small as we want, around you, your family, your work. And so if you enter those areas, we'll get a call, dispatch will get a call, and we can roll law enforcement immediately. It's high speed, it's the future, right? And it's awesome, right? So between the scram devices that we use for DUI people, and also these devices that we use to monitor violent offenders, we have there's been about 400 people on it last year. And here's a statistic that you won't hear while they're beating me up in the media. This is one thing we learned. We had about 3,000 people that came into the system last year. Of the unmonitored population, I think what's the number, 27%? 27% reoffended who were not monitored. 4% who were monitored. So, while they're beating me up, I'm happy because I know that we've made the county safer. And I don't think it's unreasonable for somebody to wear a monitor who's been charged with a crime. Yes, sir.
It's kind of like the negative of the ankle monitors to keep them with, you know, like in their house or something like that.
Right, and
So
we do
if
that
you
too.
leave your house, then somebody goes get you.
Right, and we do that too. And here's the thing, for 30 years we had this, right? But what they knew is the bondsmen were supposed to be doing it,
They weren't.
and they weren't. So the only reason why they're suing me now is because it's working. The bondsmen aren't complaining. The bondsmen like it because it's easier for them to find guys who abscond. They don't have an issue because here's the problem with the other side of the bond issue, and I'm going to move on. But here's the problem that they won't talk to you about. So let's say a guy commits an armed robbery tonight, and he gets a $100,000 bond. They'll do $100,000 10%, which means he's supposed to put up 10% of cash or property. The reality of it is they go to a bondsman, and the bondsman only charges them 1%. And they make payments on that. So then they just get out the door for a couple $100, and they're moving around. That's the reality of it, and that's what we're trying to address by some technology. And so, you know, it's going to play out in the next couple of weeks, and quite frankly, I'm happy about it because I'm the kind of guy who believes that, you know, if once I win, then that dispute will be over, right? So that's what we're doing. Yes, ma'am, I can tell you.
That's the question we had, like with the Greg Leon case, he's only allowed in the restaurants.
Yeah, that's a Lexington case.
Oh, okay, but I mean, if they wore that, you would know that they're just going to the.
That's right.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not allowed to go out to see a movie with their kids or anything like that. They just have to go from the house.
Whatever the judge orders, right? We would actually know that's happening. See, and normally they'll say that, they'll just say, hey, don't do this or don't do that, and there's no way to know whether they're doing it or not. There's a lot of lawyers outside the public defender's office who like it because, quite frankly, victims will come in and say, oh, he drove by my house last night, and it might not be true. And so we can go and look and say, no, he didn't actually drive by. Not to mention the fact that when a person's been on that for a period of time, you can say, hey, look, we know that they complied with every term. So that it provides mitigation as well as possibly aggravation if the person goes and does something or cuts it off. Yes, ma'am.
Is it only violent offenders that you would monitor under the IDC?
Yeah, it depends because it depends on what your definition of violent is, right? So I'll give you an example. CDV, I'm not lawyering anybody, but I'm just being honest because CDV first is a nonviolent offense. But tell that to the person who got slapped, right? So the judge listens to not to put CDV on you, I apologize, right? You know, I'm just using this example, but so what happens is the judge will look at their prior record, right? Because they could have a long history. So they look at their prior record and the charge that they're charged with and make a decision. So I don't decide who gets on it, right? The judge will listen to the facts and make a decision at bond court, and then if the person believes it should come off, they can go before a judge, and the judge listens to the facts and take it off. So I don't make a decision about, because quite frankly, if I had my way, I'd probably want to put almost everybody on it, except for people it doesn't make sense for it to be on. Like, I would want all my armed robbers on it, and I would want all my burglars on it.
That's the problem. You want to put it on everybody.
I don't want to put it on everybody.
You just said you did.
No. What did I just say? I said I would have all my armed robbers on it, and they're not on it. I would have all my burglars on it, and they're not. I would have any murderer who makes bond, I would want them on it, right? But I don't make that decision.
My question, what's the criteria?
Yeah, the judge makes that decision, right? I don't make that decision, right? Because, I mean, when I look at people's prior record, you can kind of get a feel,
Absolutely.
right? And I think people will understand that there's a need for that. But people have been around, they've seen the things happen in our community. Yes? Yes, sir.
I like the idea, but I also see the cons in it as well. It gives a foothold for further litigation down the road. Well, we did it here, it worked. Let's do it here and see if it works. Let's do it here.
Yeah, but except for I don't control it, the judge does.
But it would still lead to a foothold showing precedence to use it in the future for other things when it lowered it. Just like the traffic light down in Ridgeway.
Mm-hmm.
There's a speedometer down there that gives
Right, yeah.
electronic tickets. Fatalities went way down when they put that in.
Right.
I would be a proponent of doing that everywhere, because it's gonna make people drive the way they should drive, once they get enough tickets.
Difference is that there's no law for that. I have a law.
But this gives legal precedence.
I'm not making the law up. The law is already there.
Giving people, the judge.
The home detention statute already exists. The home detention statute already exists in South Carolina. See, the monitoring in and of itself has existed for years. The difference is it's actually being done.
Right. But it's still a reactive stance, it's not gonna stop that guy from going and murdering somebody.
That's not actually true. I'll give you
They could still go murder.
somebody could do that, but let me give you an example of the first case that we ever had on this program. It's funny you should say I held one back for you because that's kind of what I do, right? So here's the first guy we put on this program. He made bond. He had stabbed his wife, and she was in the hospital at Richland Memorial Hospital.
Stabbed in the stomach.
Stabbed in the stomach. And the judge put an exclusion zone around the hospital where she was. The guy came down here, they put the monitor on him. By the way, it's not my company, right? I don't make a dime off of that, right? The girl puts the monitor on the guy, right? He leaves here and immediately drives over there and starts driving in and out of the exclusion zone. And of course, they get an alert right away. There's a big center down in Houston. We start buzzing, not we, but they start buzzing his bracelet, right? He doesn't respond. They know where he is, so they roll law enforcement there, right? He's around, right near the hospital, and they pick him up, and he's back in the jailhouse 45 minutes later.
He circled the hospital 3 times.
3 times. So my thing is, this is the way I kind of look at that. One of the things about our system is everybody has a theory until somebody gets killed. That's the way I look at it. I'm not going around choosing who gets on it, but I think that it's responsible on my part to provide this service in the community so that people have it who need it. Because everybody is not good. So yes, there's like anything, you know, your car has the potential for abuse, but we aren't still riding in horses and buggies. So that's just the way I look at it. I get it. I'm the elected guy. People will point the finger, and because they've read 1984, they'll be trying to come at me.
Can you explain intelligence driven?
Yeah, intelligence driven means this. So what we do is, like, let's say if you're law enforcement, you stop somebody in a car, and there are 4 guys in there, and you know you find some weed, but you don't charge 3 of them. And then the next night there's a murder, and there's a guy down at that same guy down at that scene. And then the next night something happens somewhere else. All those reports will be in the system, but they're not normally collated, right? So we're able to see those, right, and push that information out so we can put that in the hands of the judge. Because when Honeywell happened, and there was another murder as well, her name escapes me, but when that happened, the first thing the judges said was what? We lack information. They said, we don't have enough information.
I
So
think
now,
that other name if you let them wrap up. They need you.
boy, you always rushing me.
But he will stay afterwards and take questions. She just wants to wrap up the entire
Okay,
section.
and we got some gifts for you.
Yeah.
But
But it
the
was
fact is, it
Tanya Anderson. She was
Yeah.
at work at APAC.
that's right, off of Broad River Road. So anyway, that's how we collate that information and push that to the judge. Anybody have any other questions? Ah,
Cost, it's always about money.
I held that one back too, offender pay. And that's why they're coming at me. You like it, right? But they don't. They think the government should pay for that.
Well, what we missed the question, he was asking if we could get out of jail free card.
No, I think.
Only a monopoly, brother. He said, who pays for it?
How are they paying for it?
The offender pays for it. It's $8 a day, and there's also a mechanism in it where the government, let's say you're stuck in jail and you can't get out, and that's the only reason, the government can get a $5 rate as opposed to like let's say you got cancer, and the government doesn't want to pay for that, right? So they can put you on a monitor at a $5 rate as opposed to the $62 a day plus thing. And so people are like, I don't like that. But there's a statute out there that says that's how it's supposed to be. Right? But they haven't read that far yet, but I have. So we'll see what happens.
In other words, they're coming after you for something that's already written. They're just being lazy and not doing it.
They don't like it because we're doing it. They used to walk in the courtroom and say, hey, Your Honor, he'd like house arrest. And the judge would say, okay. And the reality was that nobody was monitoring it. Now that it's happening, now it's a problem.
They're just not doing their job.
It is what it is. You know, it's like Tom and Jerry. All right, so I appreciate y'all's time. I think that's all I have. If y'all ever need anything from me, don't hesitate to call. My office is right up there. I'll be here in the corner where they've relegated me.